Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our sessions on discovering Islam. Uh, we have started discussing the topic of inviting others to the message of the Almighty. Uh, After having discussed a number of different categories which an inviter can find himself in, and as a consequence, talking about what exactly is expected from them when they are in a certain capacity. We started discussing the strategy of how dawah, invitation to others towards the message of the Almighty, should be given. And I mentioned a verse, the most important verse in this particular area, verse 125 of Surah An-Nahl, which says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah." Invite towards the path of your Lord with hikmah, with wisdom. So, how exactly should it be done is what we are now discussing. What is the strategy? So, in the last session, I talked about uh, the first part of this discussion. Uh, how is this particular strategy of inviting others towards the path of the Almighty? What strategy is to be adopted? Towards the end of my presentation, I just mentioned a few points on the area of the psychological factors which should be considered while somebody who is inviting others towards the path of his Lord should consider. I'm going to talk about them in a little more detail. The first of the psychological factors is uh, to try as best as one can to make the message appear acceptable to the addressee. Uh, you see, a message for a newcomer is something which is different from what he has been believing in and accepting. Uh, some parts of the message are the ones which are going to be very difficult for him to accept to begin with. And there are other parts of the message which are okay, acceptable, at times attractive for the addressees. So one should make the task of the one who is to accept the message easier by coming up with a presentation, at least to begin with, in a way that the person doesn't feel uncomfortable. You see, if you make a first statement about your religion that appears to be so different, difficult, and allow me to say weird for a newcomer, then be absolutely sure that there's not going to be any second communication with the person. So we find in the Quran such statements, as well as the Prophet ﷺ himself asked his companions to make sure that when they are delivering the message, yassiru, make things easy for people, wala tuassiru, and don't make it difficult. And watubashiru, give them good news, wala tunaffaru, and do not scare them away. So that's the first thing that should be considered. Quite often we'll come across talking to people who have hardly any idea about our religion. Even within Muslims, we find people who are not particularly exposed to the message properly. So when we talk to them about our religion, Allah's message, we should talk about those points which are easy to understand, easy to follow, manageable, instead of coming up with ideas right at the beginning, which are difficult and which are, for a newcomer, not acceptable. The second thing that needs to be considered by all people who are inviting others towards the path of the Almighty is that they should be careful in pointing out the flaws in the opinions of others, as well as the faults in the personalities that they are impressed by. Because if you are going to start talking negatively about their point of view right at the beginning, the fear is that there is going to get a barrier erected, which is going to cause the communication to come to a complete halt. You will say things and the other person is not even going to listen to you. So when we are talking about the views, religious views, narratives of others, and we want them to accept our understanding, do not start your discussion, your presentation with those views, such statements which are negative, which are critical of the point of view of others. Uh, we should be we should be respectful, uh, and we should talk in a way that the other person finds himself comfortable in listening to what we are saying. So the Quran tells us, for example, that while speaking to the polytheists, do not talk about their false gods, even their false gods, in a way, in a language which is abusive and insulting. So the Quran says, "وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ." Do not use abusive language for those whom they worship other than Allah. فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Lest they should use the same language for Allah uh, in in response, and they don't even know it, because obviously right now they are believing in something else. They're emotionally attached to another point of view. So we need to be very careful. Uh, at times, in these present times, you can attract a lot of uh, viewership from people if you use a very strong negative language, because each narrative, each point of view has large followings. But that does not serve the purpose. That is not what we are expected to do. The third point is that uh, when we are presenting the message, particularly to those who are leaders, uh, you know, they should not be uh, offended unnecessarily, because leaders are used to being praised by their followers in a way which is at times exaggerated. And when you're used to getting praise from others, uh, you don't want to listen to anything negative about yourself. It's a human weakness. I mean, everybody is praising me. Who the hell is this person? You know, he's talking negatively about me. So we need to be careful. Uh, we have an important task at hand to present the message of the Almighty before others, and we don't want to create any psychological barriers right at the beginning, which would prevent an otherwise good person from listening to you with an open mind. Because what we want to get across is something important. It would not be understood unless the person is fully mentally present. He is, listening to you carefully, and he's asking questions. But imagine the person doesn't even listen to you because of your own fault. You initiated your discussion, your presentation in a way that you have kind of hurt his ego, and that obviously would be counterproductive. So imagine the Almighty is sending his messengers, Musa and Harun alayhimus salam, to as evil and tyrant person as Pharaoh. But the idea was that, I mean, the message is to be presented to him, and if possible, he should accept it. I mean, why would you approach somebody for your message to be delivered to him if you have no hope of him accepting it? So obviously, there is a possibility. but there is a possibility that the other person might accept it. Make it as acceptable for him as possible. So the Almighty, he advised, asked the two messengers, Musa and Harun alayhi salam, is Haba ila Pharaoh. Go, both of you, to Pharaoh. Innahu tawa. He has indeed transgressed, gone beyond limits. فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, and speak to him gently, politely. So even to Pharaoh, such a tyrant ruler who was, unscrupulous, caused so much harm to people, and the Almighty is saying that speak to him politely, gently. لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ. So he might he might understand. أو يخشى, or he might fear. But if you're going to go there and shout and insult him, forget about it. Your message would never even be heard. So really the idea is, you see, there is this real essence of the message, which is the same. But that essence, which all humans have been designed to accept it, they're only going to be in a position to accept it once they listen to it carefully. And it would be a shame that the person whose responsibility it is that he has to deliver the message, he delivers it in a way that the other person is put off. And shutters are put down and it's all over. So the Almighty says that do it politely and do not mention any statements, remarks which are offending. Point 4, if people are not interested, don't deliver the message when they're not interested. Look for an opportunity when you feel that they are interested. So there is a verse in the Quran. This verse about Pharaoh was Surah Taha, Surah number 20, verses 43 and 44. There is a verse in Surah Al-Alaq, Surah number 87, verse 9. It says, Fazakir. So, Prophet, you remind. Inna fa'at is zikra. If reminding is going to be beneficial, you find that it's not helping. It's not your job to just keep shouting uh, in a crowd where nobody is listening to you. So, unless the other person or group of people are interested, well, it's not advisable that you deliver the message. And if after you've started delivering the message, they show their lack of interest, they become aggressive, they start uh, giving remarks which are insulting, the Quran says, well, gracefully remove yourself. Do not insist on continuing with that message, delivering that message. There's no point in it. I mean, the idea is the other person should understand. The idea is that, the Almighty's message, which appeals to human nature, appeals to human intellect, is delivered and put across in an effective way. But if people are not showing any interest, instead they are being insulting, then don't continue with it. So the Quran says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ يَخُوضُونَ فِي آيَاتِنَا. And when you see people engaged in mockery regarding our verses, فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ, just ignore them, move away from them. حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِ, until they begin to talk of something else, other things. So you should not stay there. And it really is going to be a shame that you continue talking about the same subject. Just remove yourself until such time that they engage in discussing something else. وَإِمَّا يُنْسِيَنَّكَ الشَّيْطَانُ, and if Satan causes you to forget about it, فَلَا تَقْعُدْ بَعْدَ الذِّكْرَى مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, then do not sit with them as soon as you remember amongst those who are wrongdoing people. This is Surah Al-An'am, verse 68. The idea is that A, you have to deliver the message to the people who are interested. And B, you would not continue sitting at a place where people are not interested in listening to your message. Instead, they are insulting it. Well, we are not going to shout at the people insulting. And obviously, we're not going to beat them up, but we'll gracefully remove ourselves from there. Not permanently, not saying that it's all over. But as soon as we realize that they are now engaged in something different, we can come back because we have a message to deliver. We can't cut off our relations with anyone unless obviously the other person initiates the process. The fifth point is that the presenter should avoid uh, presenting the message which is very long and is dry and boring. Uh, that is what puts off people. Uh, there was a companion of the Prophet, Abdullah, who used to deliver the message once a week on Thursdays. And he was asked by people to do it on a daily basis. Well, he said, no, I'm not going to do it. This is exactly what I learned from the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Uh, if he said, the Prophet said, if people insist, do it twice a week. If they continue to insist, twice, not more than that. But, there is a certain capacity that people have. Don't go beyond that. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that it is a sign of wisdom of a person that when he speaks, he is brief and is effective. And when he prays, his prayers are long. So if you want to spend more time in saying your prayers rather than boring people. Uh, so that's another important point. Number 6, like a good presenter uh, could avoid presenting the message when it isn't needed, he should also look for opportunities. I mean, uh, obviously, the idea is that the message must get across. Uh, Allah provides opportunities. When an opportunity comes your way, grab it. And a good, eager presenter of the message of the Almighty is always looking for such opportunities. So, if you are invited to speak, go ahead and speak. If in a discussion somebody asks you a question, answer it, looking at the level of interest of the people. And oh my goodness, every now and then you get the opportunity of reminding people about the reality of this life and its purpose. How? Well, we know that people keep leaving this world. Each time a close friend or a close relative or even a famous person, each time anyone leaves this world, there is an opportunity. I mean, in the recent times, last couple of weeks, I keep telling people that the city I'm living in has a population of 150,000. Muslims would be hardly 10,000. In the last 1 month, we had 2 deaths of young people of 21, 22 years age. A couple passed away, one after the other, within a span of 4 days. And oh my goodness, I and there was another lady, very mother of a very close friend living there in Guelph, passed away. And I was informed by him that I have a daughter who is physically not normal, and he's already 23, and that's about the age that the doctors have told him. that she has the chance of surviving, plus minus 1, 2 years. This is the reality of life. I mean, people who are running away from the message of the Almighty, I mean, how long are they going to do it? Because God provides opportunities, and those opportunities should always be taken as the moments where the message should be put across. Again, properly, politely, intelligently. Um, there is this mention in the Quran that Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was imprisoned, there were two fellow prisoners who came to him saying that we have had our respective dreams. Each one of them mentioned his dream. And they said that we see you as a very noble person. Uh, could you kindly tell us what is exactly the meanings? How do we understand these dreams? And Yusuf alayhi salam said that, look here, before the daily meals that we receive, before today's meal arrives, I will have already told you about what the meanings of your respective dreams are. In other words, you know, be rest assured, calm down, and I'm going to oblige. But before that, please listen to me. And he started the message of the Almighty and said that I have left the worship of those false gods that others are worshiping, and I'm following the path of the Prophet. So that's where he started from. Obviously, the two young people who were eager to know what exactly were the meanings of their dreams, they would have, the chances were that they would listen to it very carefully. So, what I'm saying is that when we are presenting the Almighty's message, the principle is that if people are not interested, don't talk about it. But another principle is look for opportunities. There are God sent opportunities which one should always make use of. Then there is this principle which the Quran mentions that when we are talking to people who have a different point of view, we should start from commonalities and then move on to differences if they are to be discussed. As mentioned earlier, if we start our discussion on our differences and we start criticizing others, other points of view, then the person is going to just put his shutters down. He's not going to listen. And if you start talking about the points of commonalities, the person would have confidence in you that he's talking about the same stuff that I also believe in. I agree with him. I mean, that makes sense. And then from there you proceed to talk about things which you think are right, but the other person is not quite clearly appreciating. So that is another important principle which we find mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al Imran, Surah number 3, verse 64. The Almighty says, Qul, say, Ya Ahlul Kitab, O people of the book, Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawaim bainana wa bainakum. Let's come close and discuss those principles which are commonly shared. Allah, that we are not going to make uh, any one of us Rab, lords other than Allah. Fine tawallahu, then if they turn away, فَقُولُوا اشْهَدُوا بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ, tell them that be witnesses to the fact that we have submitted. In other words, I mean, once you have done your best to make sure that the other person is not unnecessarily put off because of your lack of wisdom, uh, and then he turns away, it's not your fault. But try as best as you can to make sure that your way of presentation is not one that is going to cause the other person to be unnecessarily upset. Then the eighth point is that if the other person resorts to unjust comments, instead of continuing with the discussion with the same line of argument, one should change the way of discussion. It's very likely that when you're discussing something with somebody who has a different point of view, that you might find that you actually started talking about something which is going to cause unpleasantness. And you find that the other person is getting inflexible, rigid in his approach. change the line of argument. Come up with something different. Do not continue with a discussion which is going to only cause problems and would not lead you anywhere. The idea should not be to defeat the other person. The idea should be to let the other person understand. So there is this example of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he presented to that arrogant tyrant ruler Namrud Allah's message, and he said that my Lord is the one who yuhyi wa yumeet. Rabbi allazi yuhyi wa yumeet. My Lord is the one who gives life and he causes people to die. He said, Qala ana uhyi wa umeet. He said, I too give life, and I too cause people to die. Obviously, it was absolute nonsense. But had Ibrahim alayhi salam started telling him that, you know, what you're saying is sheer rubbish, it would have actually gone nowhere. The discussion could have actually turned into a dispute. And but there was no possibility of him having any chance of understanding and accepting. So he completely changed the line of argument, and he said, "Okay, Allah Ibrahim, fine Allah ya'ti bishamsi min al-mashriq fa'ti biha min al-maghrib." He said, "Okay, fine. My Lord is the one. Allah is the one who brings the sun from the east. So you bring it from the west. If you also have the same powers, if you have the same level status, do it." فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. What happened was that the kafir, this believer, he was blown away, speechless. So he had no answer. So there is one thing that I wanted to say. That when we are presenting the Almighty's message with wisdom, we should look at the psychological factors. We should never present the message in a way that the other person or the other group of people, they are offended unnecessarily. If they are offended despite your good presentation, well, it's none of your faults. But your presentation should not be the one which should cause others to be offended. Now, another aspect of wise presentation is manner of presentation. How should the presentation be done so that it becomes effective and wise? Um, the idea is not just to present the message in a simple, bland way and your job is done. The idea is that people should be informed about the Almighty's message effectively. And even if there is a slight possibility that the other person might accept the message, well, every attempt should be made to make it effective, attractive, acceptable. And obviously, the other person has then the option of accepting it or not. Uh, and when a message is presented in that way and a person turns away, well, he's going to be exposed. It would be absolutely clear that the fault lies in him. So when Musa alayhi salam came to learn about the fact that now he is going to be, he has been entrusted with the task of presenting the Almighty's message before Pharaoh, and others, he prayed to the Almighty. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. My Lord, open my heart and make my task easy. Open my heart, that is, make me feel comfortable. I should feel confident and make my task easy. I know that when I'm going to start doing it, there could be many difficulties. Make them easy for me. Wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli, and untie the knot in my tongue so that they should understand what I'm saying. If I say something they wouldn't be able to understand because of my speech, problems in my speech, obviously it's not going to help. So please help me. Now that you've given me the task, I want to be I want to be up to it, I want to do as best as I can. So what are the different points that we should consider in the manner of presentation? Well, number one, the message should be presented most clearly. The language should be such that people should understand. Uh, the Quran is the best example of it. The Quran says that it has been presented bilisanin Arabiyyim mubin, in a clear Arabic language. I mean, to be honest, there are passages of the Quran which require us to ponder and reflect and do research and deep research. And then there are disputes. But the fact of the matter is that the more important points that the Quran wants to put across to everyone, they have been delivered in such effective way that there is no complaints that's not clear. It's absolutely clear. If there is a problem in understanding, it lies with the people who are not giving it up, you know, not attempting to understand it as best as they should. So uh, the language should be simple and yet effective, to enable the addressees to be affected by it. Simple language can be dull, and simple language can be effective. So the idea is not just to us throw it at others. It should be to let others know in a way that they should be impressed by the message. The second point in the manner of presentation is that uh, it should not be a presentation which is just monotonous. Instead, it should be presented in different ways, diverse styles and arguments. The Quran claims that وَكَذَلِكَ نُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ. That is how we have presented the verses of the Quran in diverse ways. وَلِيَقُولُوا دَرَسْتَ. So that they should say that you've communicated it clearly. وَلِيُبَيِّنَهُ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. And so that it becomes absolutely clear to those people who want to understand. So while presenting the message, it should be the worry of the presenter that the other person should understand. You know, making a very impressive speech which nobody understands really doesn't make sense. It is not what is expected. The message is to be delivered to others, so others must understand it. So it should be couched in a language which others are able to understand. And the Quran says the Quran has presented it in various different styles, different arguments, so that every person has his own taste. And if person is not quite as moved by one form of presentation, one passage, the other passage is going to affect him. Honestly, I keep saying that, I have my own favorite surahs, but this is because that's my taste. I'm sure if I'm going to talk to others and share my list, the others' lists are going to be different from mine. Because the Almighty has catered for the needs of the diverse, you know, expectations of people. And that is what a presenter should do as best as he can, to do things differently. So that if one presentation, one style has not worked, let's go for another. The third thing in the manner of presentation is that the presenter should make his presentation with passion. You see, the message of the Almighty is a strong message. It really is talking about certain realities that we've not seen. And therefore, they have to be put across in a way that the people are moved. It's not just the content, it's not just good language. It is the passion of the speaker that also uh, does the trick. So it is said about the Prophet ﷺ himself that when he would inform people about the next life, the life hereafter, uh, you could see that he's changed. His eyes are red. His voice would get raised, and his emotions would be visible. It would be as if he's telling that the reality that I'm warning you against is just around the corner. It's going to happen the next day. So, obviously, the life hereafter is such a big reality that you all are going to face it. And if people are not as yet fully aware of it, if they have not really been moved by the mention of it, well, the presentation, the style of presentation of the speaker should also play an important role. Uh, but one, obviously, one thing is the passion. Despite the passion, a genuine presenter of the Almighty's message uh, would never turn his presentation into a debate where uh, people are actually competing, vying with each other to see as to who wins and who loses. A true presenter of the Almighty's message would withdraw, even at the risk of people thinking that he's lost it. But there is no way you're going to start debating with other people in a way that instead of focusing on the real points, the real message, you're actually more interested in watching and finding out who is the winner and who is the loser. That is not what the Almighty's message would ever want us to do. So, if the person who is presenting the message has this apprehension that this is now turning into a debate, he'll withdraw. He won't get meddled in a distracting discussion, and he would rather stay away from it. So the Quran says, for instance, فَلَا يُنَازِعُنَّكَ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَادْعُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ. And let them not embroil you in a debate, and you invite towards your Lord. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ هُدًى مُسْتَقِيمٍ. You are on a straight path. You are on the right path. فَإِنْ جَادَلُوكَ. Then if they start debating with you, فَقُلْ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Just say, my Lord knows, Allah knows what you are doing. Allahu yahkumu bainakum fima kuntum fihi takhtalifun. Allah is going to decide amongst you in the matters where you disagree. I refuse to get engaged in the kind of competition of arguments where people are not listening with a view to understanding. They're just watching as to who really seems to be the stronger of the two. Finally, a genuine presenter of the religious message should always be focused on his target. He knows that he has to invite people to believe in the reality that there is one creator, sustainer, who deserves to be worshipped. He knows that the message that he's putting across is the message of warning people that they should get prepared for the next life because their performance in this life is going to affect the result of the next life. The quality of next life is all dependent on this life. So it should be a consistent message, although presented differently in different presentations to different audience. Uh, the consistency of the message should never be lost. People should not get confused as to what exactly is he trying to tell us. What is its target? So whoever listens to it should know it, and it should appear one message, even when you're talking about different topics. The Quran is the best example of it. You find in the Quran that even while discussing as legally, you know, uh, bland, boring topics as the description of law of inheritance, Quran is talking about uh, the expectations in a way that they are going to be the reason for you to be accountable. Be careful. Make sure that you are following the path of the Almighty. So, no matter what the topic, obviously there are many expectations of the Almighty for us to follow in the practical life. All that is mentioned and presented should be done in a way that the one theme, binding theme, should always be consistently followed, no matter what. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.